Right. So now John's coming with a question. I am with a startup. Our brand is not developed. Can I start with storytelling or not? John, are you able to come on the mic? Yes. Hello. Could you unmute yourself, John?
Hello.
Hello. Whereabouts are you, John? Where are you calling in from?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steve. I'm in Dublin, Ireland.
Okay. And so tell us a little bit about the startup, John. What's your sector? What do you do?
So we're an AI startup, and we're working with telcos and brands. We're accelerating consumer adoption of language-based conversation capabilities.
Okay. So now, okay, if I can just dig into that now. So you're accelerating the consumer adoption of language. Sorry, what was that last?
So yeah, and I'm literally on day six, guys. So I'm getting to know the technology.
Yep.
It's absolutely about transforming how customers will use both memory and voice to have better, I'll use the word customer experiences.
Yeah.
So uh, my usual way of approaching a lot of this, Steve, is to build out sort of the brand, our target audience, our
Mm,
proposition,
yep.
etc.
Yep.
But we're actually going to a major conference in Barcelona
Mm,
in a few days' time,
yep.
and I'd like to begin. But my question was, if I don't know my brand yet,
Yes.
can I start using storytelling tactics?
Yeah, I think you can. So, for example, let me just, I'm going to be kind of critically constructive here, constructively critical. Okay, so when, so I said, okay, so what? Tell us about your business. What's the business you're doing? And the what you gave me was kind of, if you like, the high level, the big picture. So we are trying to accelerate consumer adoption of large language models. We're going to transform the experience of using memory and voice. Roughly was what you said. Okay, now to everyone else on the now, you know what that looks like, because all right, you've only been there 6 days, but you know exactly what you're trying to do, and you've given us the top level summary. Okay, but the top level summary is quite abstract. So to everyone else on the call, if we were to say, okay, what's the picture that comes into your head, any of you on the call, what's the picture in your head, having heard John's description of the top level? Well, we'd all struggle to actually to say what the picture was in our heads. There isn't a picture because
Yeah, and my language is very obtuse, I understand.
that's all right. But you're working at that level. You're working at
Yes.
that because, and here's the thing, at your level, even though you've only been okay, you've been in this sector for a long time, John. Okay, so you've got lots of little experiences through life and through your professional career, like these moments of experience that, like, where you've seen, done, yeah, witnessed, learned, all these moments of experience. And what we all do, not just John, but all of us, as we go through life, we build up these experiences. We extract the wisdom, we abstract the wisdom from the experience into high level wisdom. Yeah. And that's why we're worth employing, even though we're gray haired, and yeah, we're worth employing because we've got that wisdom. Okay. Fantastic. When expert talks unto expert at that high level, you can keep it at that kind of yeah, that's where the interesting stuff is, at that level. But when you're talking to non-experts, i.e. the rest of us, or potential customers, okay, you need to be able to drop out of the abstract into the concrete. And the way you do that is you go, okay, so we're trying to accelerate consumer adoption of large language models. We're going to transform the way people use memory and voice. That's all high level. And it's very hard to see what you're talking about. So you go, for example, and you drop us right down into a single moment in time. For example, there's a lady in her 70s struggling with early onset Alzheimer's, and she's going to be ringing our bank. And okay, so you straight into a little moment in time. And the moment in time card, by the way, for everyone, the moment in time is called card is movie time. Yeah. And in the movie time card, it tells you on the back 3 things you need. The first thing you need is action. Yeah, something happens. That's why you say, for example, and you drop into a single moment where something happens to someone and they feel an emotion as a result. And that's it. You've got the movie. And we can then say, oh, yeah, I see what he means. And then once you've given us the movie, you can give us the moral of the story. So that's very kind of, basic level storytelling when you've got something complex to talk about. I'm not
I'll give
saying,
you an example that might help, Steve.
yes, please.
I walk into my home and I'd say, turn on the lights, and it knows to turn on the lights. And it is a certain maybe setting, and it may be, it's using your voice and things happen around you.
Yeah. So you walk in and you say, turn on the lights for movie night. And it
Yeah.
turns on exactly the right lights, turns the TV on, heats up the popcorn, whatever. Yeah. So it's kind of
Lovely.
knows what you want. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So again, now you've given us that little movie. We're all going, oh yeah, yeah, I see what you mean. Right. So that's what story does. It allows you to connect the big picture to the little picture. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then you come on to the question of brand. Now there is a card in the deck called called Hero and Guide, which is about actually establishing your kind of your brand. Well, it's one way of establishing your brand. Okay, where you're thinking with this card, I, John, am not the hero of the story. Um, I am my customer or the person I'm trying to help is the hero, and I am the guide. So you're not Luke, you're Yoda, you're not Harry, you're Dumbledore. Yeah, you get the idea. Okay, and then you think, okay, well, if that's the case, so my customer is on a journey, trying to get somewhere, and I'm going to come along and help them out in some way. So if they're Cinderella, I'm the fairy godmother. If they're Rocky, I'm the little guy who trains Rocky. Okay, so you get the idea. And then you think on the back of the card, it says, well, what kind of guide are you? And it gives you some options. There are more, but it gives you some options. Are you an explorer or a rebel? Are you a defender or a warrior? Are you the sage, full of wisdom, or the muse, all about creativity and encouraging artistic expression? So, Apple, for example, is clearly like a muse brand about creativity. And McAfee Security, like cybersecurity, is all about defending. And you get the idea. So, there are lots of these options where you can think, right, we're guiding the customer, we're helping them get what they want to get, and we're going to give them a particular kind of gift. Right? We're going to speak to them in a particular tone of voice, and that's the beginnings of establishing brand. Now, what I when I've done branding kind of story exercises with clients, something that's quite interesting to do is you play around with lots of options. Well, what if we were a rebel brand? What if we're a defender brand? What if we're a sage brand? You can play around with different options. Some of them don't feel right. You go, well, we're not that. Yeah, we're not Haribo. Yeah, we're not KFC. So you can put those to one side. Well, maybe we are, in your case, clearly with technology. You could be saying, well, we're a sage, the wise old man, wise old woman, and we're going to help you to educate yourself. Or you could actually say, look, we're kind of defenders. AI is this raging dragon out there devouring everything, right? And we're going to help you defend what really matters, which is the quality of the service you give your customers. Okay. So you play around with it and you think, okay, well, which one feels right for us? And given that you're going off to a conference in a few days' time, you haven't got a lot of time to do research on this. So you think, okay, well, which one feels right? Which one can I use to tell a good story? And let's go and try that one out and see how it works. Now, come clearly that is not how to build a brand for the long term, because the really crucial question when you're building a brand over a period of time is what voice does your customer most need to hear? So if you're in technology, you'll often be surrounded by people who think of themselves as disruptors and rebels, right? Well, if you're selling air traffic control systems, I don't want you to go breaking the rules. I don't want my plane to be landed by a maverick air traffic controller. Yeah. I want the person, the man or the woman, to follow the rules. I don't want a rebel. So it's about what your customer needs is really important. But you may not have time to do that. You may just think, okay, play with this story and think about your customer as the hero and you are the guide. And then you look on the back and think, right, which guide can I be? And just use that to structure your first
Pitch.
yeah, your first trial run of okay, what
Yeah.
kind of, and then you go off and you do some proper research. Interestingly, you mentioned we're talking about branding, and I'm not here to pitch new products, but I don't know if you've seen this on the story chat. This
I
is the
have seen it, yeah.
yeah, okay. So this is the pack of archetypes, which is the first time we've done an expansion pack for Storyteller Tactics, and this contains okay. So hero and guide contains 6 possible archetypal guides. The archetype set is 12 archetypes, each of which has 2 dark sides. So that's 36 characters. And you can start making combinations of characters with them as well. So there's about 100 in this box. There's about 100 different characters that you could adopt. Okay, so that's, and there's
So is
also
my
there's a,
starting point from a card's point of view, the
yes,
hero and guide card, or where did you get the moment in time idea, which is lovely, thanks,
yeah.
Steve.
The
Where
moment in time is a card called Movie Time.
movie time? Okay.
Yep. Then what I would do for the rest of your okay, the journey where you're the guide and the customer is the hero, is
Yeah.
take a structure card, one of the blue ones, like for example, No Easy Way, and think, right, this is a roller coaster journey for our customer trying to achieve what they want to achieve, right? And on the back it shows you the roller coaster. So there are these stages of the journey, and we come along at one stage in the journey. We're not at, we know we're not on the journey, but we come along and we help at one stage on the journey, and we follow them, we hold their hand, we do whatever we do whatever feels right, but we help them along the way. So basically, what I'm saying is, little recipe would be, okay, hero and guide to work out what kind of brand guide you could be. A card like No Easy Way or Rags to Riches, where you're not the hero, you're the fairy godmother. And then last of all, movie time, so that at the beginning of the story, we know exactly what we're looking at because you've given us a moment. Right. And by the end of the story, you give us another moment. Yeah. And one moment is bad and the last moment is good. But both of those are movie time moments.
Thank
And
you.
John, let us know how you get on.
I will indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to move on. Solly works in the nuclear power industry. Please advise. I want to explain using a story in my engineering class the various system reliability concepts such as redundancy, independence of equipment. Great. I've created my story and I'm willing to share. Okay, but I didn't do it with pip decks. Okay, wonder which card would you use if you were me? Solly, are you able to come on the call?
No. Can you hear me? Can you
Yeah,
see
we
me?
can. Hello, nice to see you, Solly.
Good to see you. Greetings. Thanks for having me.
Well, nice pleasure. So you say you're trying to teach a class. You're trying to teach really important concepts around
Yes.
reliability and safety.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Um,
So I did build a story before I bought the pip deck, right?
mhm.
But if you were me, how would you
Okay.
start?
Okay.
You
Well,
want me to share my story? How?
I'll tell you what. Let me make a couple of predictions, and then you tell us how close I am to, yeah, with your story to what.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the movie
Mm,
time card I mentioned before is a really good card for look. Here's a moment in time where something went wrong. Now, things going wrong are better stories than things going right. Yeah, if things are going right, you tend not to tell a story about it. So I woke up this morning and my house didn't fall down around me is not a story.
mm,
I woke up this morning and the house was shaking because there's an earthquake. That's a story. Okay. So first thing is
mm,
you're almost certainly going to be telling a story of things going wrong. Okay. Now things go wrong. Well, there are two very, very good cards three very good cards actually in Storyteller Tactics to explain things going wrong. And the cards are, well, the first one is called Downfall. And Downfall is a card about, well, it's actually about cover up. Yes, so it's about things going wrong. And when somebody points out that something's going wrong, the response is, no, just carry on, just do as you're told. Yes, and that's what leads to the final tragedy. So you could say that the explosion at Chernobyl, yes, Chernobyl explosion, yes, was a direct result of them not paying attention to what happened in Leningrad a few years earlier. Well, the same problem happened in Leningrad, and they ignored it and they covered it up, and that's what led to the tragedy of Chernobyl. Okay, so that's one version. There's an interesting card in the deck which is similar. It's called Pride and Fall, and what Pride and Fall is about is the tragedy of good intentions. So somebody sets out to do the right thing, but the wrong result happens. And we love these stories. They're great teaching stories. And there's something about this story that we absolutely, so this is the story of Icarus, but it's also the story of Titanic and Jurassic Park. Yes, it's like, and the story basically, the reason why it's called Pride and Fall is the fundamentals of this story is we're going to try and solve a problem. Aren't we clever? No, we're not, because something goes wrong. Because life is always a lot more complex than okay. So those two make great teaching stories, and we love them. There is another card in there which is quite interesting, called Epic Fail, which is a list of different reasons why people give for things failing. And that is, I think, quite interesting, because when things fail, people either, well, they do lots of different things. Sometimes they accept responsibility. Sometimes they blame others. Sometimes they blame the system. Sometimes they, yeah, there's all sorts of, also, so in that card, there's all sorts of ways of exploring how things fail. The other card that's I think quite useful in this situation is a card it's in the Explore category. It's an orange card called Thoughtful Failures, and it's basically about how to react to failure. So now all of these are kind of stories about failure, about things going wrong. So that's what I'm predicting you're using, Solly. Am I right?
Yes, I did not think in that way, but when you make a formula, I could see movie time, things
Mm.
go wrong, and thoughtful failure. That's what I learned, right? Things went wrong, learn from it, evolve the design, went wrong again, evolve the design.
This is really interesting. I'm just going to grab a pen and sketch it out. There is a process here, which is the process by which we kind of learn anything, and we're trying to solve a problem. Yeah, which basically means we're trying to go from A to B, where B is a better place. Yes, B is a better place than we started, and we would love it to be a nice, yeah, we'd love it to be a nice straight line from A to B. That's what we'd like to happen.
Yes.
If that is the case, you don't tell a story about it, because it's actually, that's quite boring, and you don't if that's what's happening, you don't even notice. Actually, never mind, tell a story about it. What's actually more likely to happen is you're trying to get from A to B, and along the way, all sorts of things go wrong, right? Because you've made wrong assumptions, because you're working in a volatile environment, because all sorts of things go wrong. And then in the mess, you find a way out of the mess. Yeah. And eventually you get to where you were hoping to go. Or sometimes you go, actually, you know what? It's not B we need to head for. It's actually, we ought to be heading somewhere else. We ought to be, given what we've just been through, B is a bad idea, C is the better option. But either way, what's interesting about story is that beginning, middle, end of story means exactly this. It means, here's what we think is right. But then something goes wrong. And so we adapt. And that's the kind of the basic structure of story. And so the story card that's very useful for this is the story called, it's the card called Man in a Hole. Because the Man in a Hole story is basically saying, okay, we think we know what we're doing, we get in a mess, we climb out of the mess, and we end up in a better place, but we have to go through the bit in the middle. Yeah. And that's where that down here. Yeah. This is where you learn
Yeah.
the real lessons.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a very good structure. For stories are great. Look, there's a very interesting book. I can't see it on my shelf. The book's called Talking About Machines, and it's a book about engineers. And engineers will tell you that they don't tell stories, right? We don't tell stories. We're engineers. We just do data. Okay, well, this is true to an extent. However, okay, and you put two engineers together in a room full of things where everything is working fine, right? And they're happy. They don't actually even tell stories to each other. They just go, yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, they can just tick things off on a tick list. But you put an engineer in a situation where something is not doing what it should do. The process is broken down, and the engineer can't see why it's broken down. Then he or she will tell a story to his or her colleagues. Well, I tried this and then this, and I tried that and then that, and I don't know about this, but I've tried this. And then the customer is being really annoying, and the customer keeps asking for this, and they tell a story as a diagnostic tool to diagnose.
Yes.
And then by telling the story, they're creating a visual, like with movie time, you're creating a visual thing that other experts can go, well, have you tried doing that to it? Or have you tried doing, oh, you've tried that, okay. And then everyone else gets involved in the story. So you could call it a scenario, but everyone gets involved in the scenario. But the scenario has to be quite concrete, it has to be a moment in time. You can't have a scenario, it's very hard to have a scenario that runs for 5 years. It's just too complex. So that's my thinking. So I guess how I would approach it, and it's going to be interesting to see, is take each of those things you need to explain: redundancy,
Okay.
independence, good quality training, whistleblowing, all of the things that make a nuclear power station reliable. And for each one, you go, for example, and you tell a story. And the stories that really work are, I think, Downfall or Pride and Fall, where you're saying people were trying to do this, and they were, good people were trying to do the right thing, but nobody's perfect, and therefore we cannot predict everything. We can't nail everything down. So despite they did all the right things that they knew at the time, they made what looked like good decisions. Bang, it came crashing down. And if they cover it up, like Chernobyl and Leningrad, then it's a disaster. It's a tragedy. If they open it up and say, look, here's what we did, here's what's gone wrong, right? Then that is the beginning of a recovery. And and I know, and everyone on the call knows, if you had to choose who you want to work with long term, you want to work with people who do recovery. You don't want to work with people who do who do the opposite, who do the cover up. Okay, so does that help, Sully? Is that useful?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, anybody else want to ask a specific question about a card, or we can do a dive into story hooks, which was what I was promising you earlier, and spend half an hour looking at story hooks, and we'll have a little bit of interaction. You'll do some work. What do you think of that? Okay, I'm going to take that silence as a yes. Thumbs up. Thank you very much, Philip. Okay, right. Let's go into. Give me a second. No, give me a second. Hold on. Right. So I'm going to see if this works. Text can edit. Invite guest to edit. Copy that. Give me a second. Right. So I'm going to send you a link to a Miro board. And then I'm going to, if you can't get in for any reason, I'm going to share the screen as well. So anyone who can't get in can see the screen too. So don't worry if you can't get into the Miro. If you're not familiar with Miro, I'll give you a very quick little session, very quick instruction. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. So this is the Miro board. Are people able to get in okay? Anyone struggling to get in? Anyone getting in? I can't see any people in at the moment. What's happening, guys, in terms of the of access? Are you able to get in? Hold on. Let me just stop the share. Is anyone able to click on that link and get into the Miro? If not, we'll change course slightly. Anyone able to join on the Miro board?
I think there is you have to register first. So
give me a second. Let me just quickly look at my email. It might be I need to quickly hit some. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Rather than using the Miro, I can see that one person's managed to get in. Okay. I'll just walk you through the board on screen share, rather than. Okay, so we've got a couple of people who managed to get in, and everyone else is being asked to register. Okay, well, listen, it's not essential that I'll use screen share instead, and I'll go through the story hooks card on screen share. Okay, so screen share, story hooks, share your screen. Here we go. Okay, so this is the card story hooks, and essentially what I'm doing with story hooks is saying, okay, it's no good to have, you can have the best story in the world, but if you can't get our attention for that story, then it's almost redundant. Like you could, so you have to think of the hook, and the hook is the opening 3 to 5 seconds of our time. The opening 3 to 5 seconds of your story is absolutely essential, it's crucial. Okay, because that's what's going to keep us listening to the end. So what I did for this is actually looked at TED Talks, because they're quite sort of heavy duty, theoretical, and spotted a whole different bunch of hooks they use. So the first hook they use is questions. Okay, when you ask a question, we try to answer it in our heads, then we stick around to hear your answer. So I would say to you, as an example, how old do you think my son is? Then you'll all look at me and try and figure out from what you can see of me how old you think my son might be, and you'll have a guess. Whereas the real answer would be, we've no idea. We don't have enough data to go on. We can't answer that question. But that's not what you do. You have a guess. So when you ask a question, we have a guess, and then we listen to you to see if our guess was right. And that means you've got our attention. And if we were right and we guessed correctly, then we feel clever, which is nice. If we were wrong and you tell us, okay, well, we now know something new and we now feel clever. So either way, it's quite a flattering approach to take with your target audience. Ask a question. So you can think, okay, how do I got to take the thing I'm working on. So it's nuclear safety, or it's trends in AI. I'm going to take the thing I work on and I'm going to turn it into a question. Ideally, a big question. Ideally, a question my audience, who I've researched, my audience will want to know the answer to, or they'll have a guess, or they'll be surprised when they learn. Now, I did a very quick little scoot around on LinkedIn before I came on the call, and okay, over on here, there's a couple of posts, both on LinkedIn today, both came in my feed. Okay, and they're both trying to get attention. So the first one literally says, attention entrepreneurs, business owners, and industry experts. Well, just shouting attention does not get my attention. Okay, so this is get ready for the biggest networking event of the year. Okay, well, fair enough, but that is not a hook at the beginning. Okay, here's another post posted within minutes. What does AI mean for growth stocks? How can you predict tomorrow's winners for today's fads? Right, 2 questions straight away. And if this is your area, if you're into investment, okay, you're thinking, okay, well, how do I predict tomorrow's winners from today's fads? Okay, so the question provides a very powerful hook. So it'd be really interesting, and those of you who are able to get into the Miro, if you can see whether the post-it notes here, well, start having a go. Start thinking about, so in terms of nuclear safety, right? Well, what's the question that you can ask people, and that they're going to want to try and answer, and that they're going to. So you think about, okay, there's a thing I need to talk to people about. I'm going to open with a question, and then, like in John's case, John's got to go and speak at a conference. John is going to open with a question, and by the end of his presentation, he gives us the answer to that question. So it allows you to do a framing device as well. So and so you could say, so at the beginning of my talk, I asked you the question, da 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 da. Here's my answer. Okay, so it's a nice framing device as well as an attention device. Now, the next category of hook is the unexpected. Okay, so again, an example I pulled out from a client, a Pipdex customer, was this post on LinkedIn. And it says, my proud moment of losing out on a big project. And in the world of LinkedIn, it's all about success. Yes, it's all about, I'm so proud of my new contract, my new job, my new la 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 la. I'm so proud of my child who's got a whatever it is. Yeah, it's all this, it's all positive, positive, positive. Okay, this one is, I'm proud of losing. Come on, why? Why is he proud of losing? Straight away, it's got your interest because it stands out. It's not what you expect on LinkedIn, but it's also, okay, given the setting, it's kind of ironic. It's like a little puzzle. Yes. LinkedIn is all about success. This guy's talking about failure. He's proud of failure. That's not, it's kind of ironic. It's like a puzzle. So what's wrong here? What isn't what it should be? Okay. So that is irony is one of the really most powerful hooks. It's a great book on script writing by a guy called Blake Snyder. And he said, irony in a script, in a movie, in a story, irony is like an itch you've got to scratch. Someone's set a puzzle and you've got to solve it. And you've got to solve it by sticking with the puzzle. So that's great. Irony is okay. Is it is it ironic that people are flying around the world to attend a conference on saving the world from emissions, but they're all flying there in private jets? Yes, it's ironic. So there's something wrong, and that gets our attention. Okay, so irony is a good hook. Relatability is very useful. Excuse me. So you can write in any voice you like. You can write about anyone you like in a story. But if you use relatable, you and we, and I, you and we, is different to they and he and she. If you're using second person pronoun, for example, and talking about, well, what is your, I might say to someone, if I was pitching Storyteller Tactics, I might say, what is your next story worth financially, money terms? What's your next story worth? And it's impossible for you to sit there and think, he's not talking to me. You can't do it. You can't switch off that part of your brain that's picked up on the word you. And you're going, oh, yeah, what is my next story worth? So relatable. Think about how you can relate to the person this story is going out to as if you're having a conversation. So language and tone of voice, as if you're having a conversation. Okay. There's something interesting about knowledge in a very short form. There's a lot of how-tos, listicles, rules and hacks. So all of this is basically a way of compressing and displaying knowledge in a very accessible form. And if you're going to say, look, here are 3 things I've learned from my experience of delivering AI projects at corporate scale. Okay. Well, I'm going to write 3 things. I can read 3 things. And you've learned them. Okay. Well, if you've learned them, I can learn them too. So the promise of knowledge makes for a very good hook. In the case of, in Solly's case, okay, here are 3 things. Here are 3 things every nuclear engineer needs to know from Chernobyl or Fukushima or 3 Mile Island. Yeah, 3 lessons every engineer needs to know. Well, every engineer worth their salt is going to read that because, yeah, because it's an easily digestible bit of knowledge. Here are now the last one, the last sort of hook is to promise a secret. And there are key words here like exclusive, hidden, revealed, forbidden, inside knowledge. Yeah. When you go and look in the news agents, look at the magazines, and what you will see is there's the shelf with the Economist and the the Business Weekly and Forbes magazine and all those kind of highbrow heavyweight magazines. And then below that, there's the shelf with the TV Guide and the Soap Chat and the gossip magazines. And they're the ones that sell, millions of copies every week, whereas these ones don't. And on the front cover of those magazines, you'll see these keywords: exclusive, hidden, revealed, forbidden, inside. Because what this is saying is, I've got a secret. And a secret is basically knowledge plus power. Yeah, I've got some knowledge and I've got the power to reveal it or not. Right? And that's very, very powerful, a very powerful social hook into our brains. You've got a secret. So if somebody comes up to you and says, imagine when you were a kid in the playground, yes, and said, you're a teenager at school, and somebody comes up to you and says, I know someone who fancies you, right? It's impossible for you to turn around and go, I'm not interested. I don't care. You can't. You want to know who it is because it's just like, okay. So secrets work like that. So with the story hooks card, what you do is you go, okay, I've got a thing I need to talk about. Safety of nuclear power, the use of AI how consumers relate to AI, for example, many other examples out there. You put it through the card and you come up with as many different possible hooks as you can by using the card. And then when you've done that, I'll stop the share now. And when you've done that, then you basically look at them and think, well, which one works? Which one do I like most? Which one can I work with? Which one is okay? And some of them won't be. You just throw them away, but some of them will be. So they all kind of work as a I suppose technically they're called a divergent thinking tool. So the Story Hooks card encourages you to try as many different versions of a hook as you can. And maybe you spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes doing nothing but quantity of ideas. Don't worry about the quality. Just fill as many post-it notes as you can with different questions, with different ironies, with different things that are unexpected. throw it around and just go for as many as you can for about 15 minutes. And then, right, with as little quality control as you possibly can manage, don't let the voice in your head tell you not to say it. Just bang it down on paper. Well, paper, Miro, whatever you do, get it down. And then you take a step back, maybe go off and get a cup of tea, come back. You look at them and go, well, that's not right for LinkedIn. We can't use that one. That might work for Facebook. I could use that in a speech. And you pick out the ones you think are going to work. And then you try them and you see what kind of reaction you get. And then with all of these, the difference between story hook, by the way, and clickbait, well, the difference is you've got to deliver. So if you ask a question, we should be suitably impressed by the answer. Yeah. If you tell us something unexpected, it's kind of got to make sense. If you present an irony, a puzzle, well, you're going to have to resolve it. If you're presenting knowledge, it's got to be knowledge worth having. Otherwise, if you're telling me I've got a secret, well, it's got to be something I'm interested in. Otherwise, it's just clickbait, and people won't come back twice for that. So you can use these techniques, but you've got to deliver. Right? Otherwise, you're kind of Listen, we've got about 10 minutes left. I've seen a question there in the chat from Stephanie saying, "Does this kind of Miro layout?" Yes, this is the kind of thing we use in the vault, Stephanie. So we use a lot of Miro boards. We did make Mural, but they've kind of died. I don't think Mural are around much anymore. But we've gone for Miro as our kind of default. What we have in the vault is we have these boards ready laid out for you. Now, obviously, you can make your own. If you've got the PDFs of the cards, you can make your own boards. But we have them ready laid out for you. What we're increasingly doing as well is we're putting structure around them so that you go into a Miro board, and at the moment, there's like a video of me talking you through like I've just done. Yep, that particular board. And what we're kind of moving towards is a little bit more structure so that there's a series of steps. You work through each card in a series of stages, and there's a bit of reading and a bit of doing and a bit of reading and a bit of doing. So they're going to be a little bit more structured, but initially they're laid out as you've just seen. And again, the idea with them is you're not looking for one idea for a story. You're looking for lots, and they should be good, bad, and indifferent. Yeah. It's the process of almost forcing yourself. These are like, in a way, these cards are a little bit like, I don't know, like a sort of sausage machine, and you're gonna force yourself through the sausage machine. Yeah. And some sausages are going to come out, and some of them are going to be terrible, and some of them are going to be great. And I wish I could tell you it's going to be 100% great, but that it's not. And also you you could come up with, as a result of doing this, you could come up with what you think is a fantastic story, right? And you go off and you tell it to someone, and they go, "I don't get it," or they jump to exactly the wrong conclusion you didn't want them to jump to, and you go, "Oh, okay, well that didn't work," but it is not a science, storytelling. It's a craft, and you learn by doing. You don't apply a rule and stick to it. You learn by doing. But you see, it's a craft. It's not a science, but it's not an art form either. It's not something that only great novelists can do and the rest of us can't. Yeah, it's something you can practice, like learning a musical instrument. You don't have to be Vivaldi to pick up a violin. You can start. And what's interesting, I think, is that certainly in some organizations, if you make yourself a 10% better storyteller, if such a thing were possible, you make yourself a 10% better storyteller, you're suddenly head and shoulders above everyone else who's just not telling stories at all. Yeah. One of the lovely comments we had was a guy called Tom, who was one of the beta testers for Storyteller Tactics way back in about 2.5 years ago. So he's had the pack for nearly 3 years, and he works at a university here in Manchester, and he's one of our case studies on the blog. And he said he did a little case study for us about how to write a presentation, how to use story in presentation. And anyway, I've kept in touch with him, and a couple of weeks ago he put another post up for us on the Slack channel, and he said, I've been using Storyteller Tactics for 2 years now, and I've been getting 2 years of unsolicited praise for my presentations. So when I do a presentation, people come up to me afterwards or message me afterwards and say that was really good without me even asking for it. So I think if you are in an organization where people aren't natural, or they're not, look, everyone's a natural storyteller. It's just when we sit down at the keyboard, yeah, and we try and write for work, we throw it all away. So if you're one of the people who doesn't throw it all away, but goes, actually, you know what? I'm going to use this. I'm going to try and tell this like a story, even though no one else is doing it. You'll stand head and shoulders above everyone else, and people will come up to you and go, "Oh, that's good." Anyway, okay. Listen, we've got time for one or two more questions. If anybody wants to jump in with a question. Otherwise, I will. Was that somebody coming on? Hello.
Yes, this is
Brian. Brian, hello. You're very quiet.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Your headphones. It's the old headphone thing.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's good. We got you.
Yeah, thank you. So just getting started. This is very, very cool. Actually did pull the man in a hole and thoughtful failures cards to, to sort of get started here. Just started with the system. I'm a realtor. I mentioned that in my book. I've really tried over the last couple of years to bring story into what we do. And it's really two elements of it. So stories for the people selling their houses to get them to be more relaxed and work with me. And then stories for marketing their house to the end consumer that becomes the buyers. Okay. So they're a little bit different. I've gone through the Kendra Hall and the Donald Miller books and, everything else that's out there, and pretty good stuff. And I've used it. My real quick question here is a lot of the stories that I have, not so much for the ones to get someone to sell with me, but for the end consumer, I call them, I need short stories. So basically, I have to put together a story in like 100 words or less, because a lot of it is social media or on real estate listings. You only have a certain amount. And we really need something that's compelling. A lot of stuff you brought up with like the questions in that up front to sort of challenge them, might get them. Because all we're really trying to do at that point is grab attention. And then the stories will anchor them in. And, we know with stories how much longer a good story is remembered than just facts. So I'm looking for a way to sort of structure the short stories.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's really interesting. Obviously, there are certain industries where there's a formula for writing, and real estate listings are very formulaic. They're very descriptive. They are. I mean, it's interesting. Like when, as a consumer, if you're looking to buy a house, you almost don't read them because you're just going straight to the photographs,
Exactly.
right? And also they're so cliched, they're so repetitive that you don't need to read them. Okay.
Correct.
So it's a real challenge, I must admit. I have worked with a lot of real estate agents in the UK. One thing that you can maybe think about is that relatability question with writing. How many times are you saying you when you write about the house? So typically people will write about the house. It's got 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, big garage, nice garden. Yeah, and they're writing about the house. So it's interesting that, can you turn that around into you? So, for example, you will find there's a home office here where you can work from home should you need to.
Right.
Well, that's a different.
Okay. That I think we're doing fairly well. In fact,
Okay.
one of the things that we do outside of that, when they come to the house, we have little placards that'll have signs in there that'll have pictures from their experience in the house. We don't use their names because, we keep that private here.
Yep.
But our normal tagline is insert your lifestyle here.
Yep.
And we show a picture of how they enjoyed their house. We're trying to get them to relate to a house usability rather than 4-bedroom, 3 baths, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because you can see that instantly on the floor plan. So there's no point repeating. There's no
exactly.
on the photo, there's no point repeating the photo. So that was going to be my other suggestion. So the first is to what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the potential buyer into the little movie of what their life is like in that house. And so I think you've got two versions. One we've talked about is like, you can work from home in this office. You will find this, you will enjoy this garden, that sort of thing, where you're writing relatable to them. And then the other way, I think you're absolutely right, is who lived here before and what did they enjoy? So it's really interesting about, if you look at here's an interesting thing, compare a typical real estate listing and compare it with an Airbnb listing.
Right. Okay.
Look at Airbnb listings. And the way that when on an Airbnb listing, what do you see? Well, you're guaranteed to see, and you won't make a purchase without it, you're guaranteed to see a review of someone who's lived there. As in someone else who's stayed there. Yeah. And
that's an excellent point.
Yeah. But you don't get that in estate agents.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it's more than, and also you think about when you move to a house, okay, what are probably the two biggest selling issues are the state of the house and the number of bedrooms, blah, 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 the house itself. And what's the second most important selling point?
Usually location.
Yeah, exactly. The neighborhood. So if you were renting that house out on Airbnb for a holiday, yeah, then you would expect to see, I've stayed on holiday in this house and I love the bathroom, kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And I love the market down the road where you got your fresh bagels and stuff. So you'd get a sense of the what it's like to be in the house and what it's like to be in the neighborhood. But then you go to the real estate listings and there's none of that there.
Right.
So, okay, you might think, well, it's a little bit weird to ask. Say somebody's selling the house who's lived there 25 years. It might be a little bit weird to say, okay, tell us about your experience of living in the house, because it's very personal. You're right, I get that. But having said that, if someone's brought up a family in a family house, yeah, and now they're moving on because their kids have moved out, well, why not get a sense of that? We loved bringing our kids up here. It's now time for us to move on. But we know this is perfect for a family. So that's the voice of the previous occupant, which is you'd expect to see on Airbnb.
Yeah, I don't always get the answer, but when I talk to someone before we come in for the listing appointment, I say, I introduce story and I say, so part of your homework is think of 3 examples of where you really love the house. Right. Either because of the layout, the neighborhood, I try not to be too specific, let them define it. And then we'll talk about that when we come in there.
Yeah, good, very good. Okay, and I think the neighborhood is also a really key selling point.
Yes, so absolutely.
So it's almost like the voice of the current resident or previous resident saying, "We think you'll love this area because," and that's again, you would see it on Airbnb. You don't tend to see it on real estate listings, and
I'm going to take a look at some of those again.
Yeah. Okay.
I see. Some good ideas.
Good, brilliant. All right. Well, thank you. Listen, Brian.
Thank you so much.
That's my pleasure. We're going to wrap it up because we're on time, and we'll do it again next month. And we'll do a different dive into a different card.